Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the BCP Licensing Subcommittee. The first item on this morning's agenda is the election of chair. Can I have a nomination?
I would like to nominate David Flagg.
Thank you, Councillor Hilliard. Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Can I now ask the clerk just to run through the housekeeping measures before we move on to item 2? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast up until the exclusion of public and press and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, exit is by way of the nearest available signed fire route, and we must make our way to the assembly point along Brady Road under the flyover. Finally, please can we ensure that background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are switched off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, apologies.
None received.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. I will now ask each subcommittee member in turn if they have any declarations of interest for item 5 on this morning's agenda. Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. No declarations, but just for transparency, just to confirm that I have not spoken to either Councillor Keddy or Councillor Carr-Brown on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
No declarations. I also have not spoken to either Councillor Carr-Brown or Councillor Keddy.
Thank you. And just to confirm that neither have I spoken with Councillor Keddy, who is the Vice Chair of the committee, or Councillor Carr-Brown regarding item 5 on this morning's agenda. Item 4, protocol for public speaking at hearings. A protocol for public speaking at meetings of the Licensing Subcommittee is included with the agenda sheet for noting. Item 5, review of premises licence, Havana 61 Charminster Road, Bournemouth, BH8 8AUE. I will now ask each participant to introduce themselves and state their role. I'm Councillor David Flagg. I'm elected chairman and a member of the subcommittee for this morning's meeting.
Paul Hilliard, the councillor for Muddyford, Stampit and West Highcliffe, a member of the subcommittee.
Councillor Richardson, East Southbourne and Tuckton, member of the subcommittee.
Thank you, members. Participants will note that we are also joined this morning by Councillor Michelle Dower, Councillor Anne Filer and Councillor George Farquhar, who are basically attending the meeting for training purposes, but they will take no part in the hearing or indeed in the deliberations. Representations. First of all, BCP Council.
So good morning. I'm Sarah Rogers, Principal Licensing Officer.
Good morning. I'm Linda Cole, the Legal Advisor for the committee today.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Cutler and I'm clerk to the Licensing Subcommittee today.
Thank you. Can I now ask the applicants to introduce themselves to the committee?
Good morning, Gareth Gosling, Sergeant, Dorset Police.
Good morning, Louise Bosfield, Licensing Officer, Dorset Police.
Thank you. And we also have representations supporting the application.
Councillor Keddy, Ward Councillor for Queen's Park and Charminster.
Thank you.
Good morning, Councillor Sharon Carr-Brown, Ward Councillor for Queen's Park and Charminster.
Thank you. And representing the premises?
I'm Philip Day from Lacey's Solicitors, and sitting to my right is Tarek Halabi, who holds the premises licence and is the DPS. Sitting behind me is Jackson Warrener, who is a trainee solicitor and also here for training purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Before I run through the procedure, please may I check that all persons who have given notice of their intention to speak have been identified, and any person who wishes to withdraw a representation or indeed wishes not to speak has been identified. If there are no comments, I will take this as correct. I will now explain the proposed procedure and order of speaking for the hearing as follows. The licensing officer presents the report. Questions of the licensing officer by all parties, members of the subcommittee to go first. Applicant, Dorset Police will make their application. Questions of the applicant by all parties, members of the subcommittee to go first. Persons supporting the application will make their representations. Questions of persons supporting the application by all parties, members of the subcommittee to go first. Persons representing the premises will make their representations. Questions of persons representing the premises, members of the subcommittee to go first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. The hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. I will now ask all parties to confirm agreement on the proposed procedure or make representations. Thank you. Please may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they have already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. All questions are to be asked through the chair, and there will be no cross-examination of parties. Finally, please note that in relation to this item of business, the subcommittee may be asked to consider the following resolution in relation to the content of any video footage to be shown at the hearing, and any supplementary information which may be submitted prior to the hearing. That, under Section 14.2 of the Licensing Act 2003 Hearings Regulations 2005, and with regard to Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information, and that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 7 in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I will now ask the licensing officer to present the report.
So, before you do that, can I just, for a point of clarification, you've just referred to various videos. Have you or your fellow councillors seen those videos in advance of the hearing?
I can confirm that I've not seen these videos.
Thank you. I just
Councillor
wanted to
Richardson?
make that clear.
I've sort of checked.
I have not seen them, no.
And I haven't seen them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dorset Police have applied to review the premises licence under Section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003. The premises are located on a busy main road through Charminster, which consists of a mixture of residential premises, licensed bars, clubs, takeaways, and commercial businesses. Dorset Police believe the premises are associated with significant crime and disorder, and therefore no longer have confidence in the licence holder, who is also the named DPS, to uphold the licensing objectives. 10 representations have been received in support of the review application, which were from residents and 2 ward councillors. 1 letter in support of the premises was also received. No representations were received from any of the other responsible authorities. Environmental Health have received a noise complaint from one of the residents and have tried to engage with them. This noise complaint was made after submission of the review. I've been advised by the Environmental Health Officer that they've tried unsuccessfully to install noise monitoring equipment in the complainant's property, and they've left numerous messages, but the complainant has not called them back. Therefore, no representation was made by them. Members are reminded that any powers exercised by them must be appropriate and proportionate for the promotion of the licensing of directives and directed at the causes of concern, which the application identifies once these have been established following this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Do members have any questions for the officer at all? Are there any questions for the officer at all from representations?
None from Dorset Police.
None from me at the moment, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I now call upon the applicant to present the application to the committee? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Before we do start, that's very loud. Are we showing the video partway through, or would you prefer to show the videos towards the end rather than having to come in and out of public session?
It's entirely up to you, Sergeant Gosling, but obviously we will have to pass the resolution and go out of. Mr. Day, do you have any comments to make on that situation?
Yes, there are a number of videos. Some of them have been produced by Councillor Keddy on behalf of local residents. One of those, and also a very short clip, appears to relate to an incident that is the subject of a police investigation, and it seems to me that it would not be appropriate for that to be shown in public. With regard to the other videos, I'm not aware of there being any criminal investigation with regard to those. And in the interest of openness and transparency, I question whether it's appropriate to actually go below the wire with regard to that. With regard to, if I can call them the police videos, each and every one of those was actually supplied by my client from CCTV within the premises, with the exception of one, which is a video that was shot from a CCTV camera outside a nearby supermarket. That particular video appears to have been circulated widely on social media, which is how my client got a copy of it. He was alerted to that. He sent it to me and I sent it to the police. That video is also in the public domain. I'm entirely in your hands as to whether you show them in public, whether you go under the wire, if I can call it that, and as to at what point during the proceedings you view them, if indeed you decide you want to view them at all. I would warn you, there's certainly some of the police ones are long, and I have on a number of occasions asked for a summary of which bits of which video the police want to rely on to make what point, to which I'm afraid answer there has been none. And Mrs. Rogers can confirm that because I've copied her in on all of the relevant exchanges. I think it appropriate to make my position clear. I'm in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Sergeant Gosling, would you be happy for the videos to be shown in public, or is there a particular part of the video that you would prefer to remain under the line with the other videos being shown?
I agree in relation to the video that's filmed that somewhere at the premises that's outside of Havana, but the preference would be that the videos that capture the main trigger incident for the review should be out of public view.
Okay, I'll go with you what you require.
Okay.
And at the point when you wish to introduce the videos, we will then have to go into exempt session.
Okay, so if it's in order with you, I'll slightly change the order of what I've prepared, and I will go through everything that I want to provide verbally, which is only further embellishing what it is that I've provided in the written report, and then we'll cover the videos at the end if that helps.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Members happy with that? Yeah,
happy with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the main point is just to keep the committee with you so that they know what what the video is reflecting to what you said. So
Absolutely.
if it's able to do that, or if it's easier to introduce the video as you get to a certain part in your verbal presentation, then I can go that way as well.
The verbal presentation will be brief. In fairness, we've probably talked about my verbal presentation longer than it will take me to deliver it.
Okay.
You've had ample opportunity, I hope, to review, just to check you have received. We provided a 17-page document with as much information in it as we could, and we provided that 3 weeks ago, just to give you as much opportunity as possible to take advantage of that. Okay. So Havana is a very well-established premises, probably by my reckoning the most established in Charminster Road. The operator, Mr. Halabi, engages really well through the local pub watch scheme and has always been keen to assist the police and other authorities in the past. It's not without issue, largely because it is considered to be, if you like, the last chance saloon along that area. It's the place that's open the latest. There are customers that come from other premises. Potentially, they've consumed a lot of alcohol as well in advance of arriving at Havana. This has led to visits to the premises and discussions taking place at pub watch as a method of seeking informal improvement. As is detailed in the paperwork, there was a review in December 2022 submitted due to concerns that are not particularly dissimilar to those that we've experienced on this occasion. On that occasion, we were able to resolve and largely agree through mediation a number of changes that we felt and Mr. Halabi felt would be able to deliver the improvements that we were seeking. That said, as you can see in the paperwork, there have been issues since that last review. I want to just touch upon something that was raised by Mr. Day in respect of the intelligence that's included within the pack. It is important for us to highlight the issues with the intelligence and to bring that to your attention, because that is often a catalyst to our increased attention in premises. It's important that we acknowledge the existence of that intelligence, even where it cannot be fully corroborated and actioned, because it's important to us that you understand our journey through to this point, which is always our last resort. So during the process of understanding these issues, the second of the two, I just skipped over a little bit there. We did receive complaints of antisocial behaviour, and we have done for other premises as well. But in relation to particular concerns raised around Havana, as we do for any other premises, we come together as partners with key stakeholders in the community, and we come together and we meet and we determine partnership-led courses of action. During this process of trying to understand the problem and understand how it was we were going to deal with it, the second of the two incidents occurred and the decision was made by Dorset Police to review the premises licence. The first of the two incidents were reported by a concerned resident and highlighted a large disturbance that occurred outside Havana at closing time. This footage alone was alarming, and I understand that this footage will form part of the submission from Councillor Keddy, so I won't go into that in too much detail. The most serious of the two incidents which triggered the review centred around the dispersal of the remaining customers from Havana at around 5 a.m. Skip over that bit. You may hear from Mr. Day that the problem was unconnected to Havana. Perhaps that the bottle did not come from Havana, the bottle that was used in the assault, and that the offender was not a customer. We can evidence that the offender, as well as the majority of those involved, had been in Havana. You can see from the CCTV. The incident involves a group which can be seen to leave Havana. Mr. Halabi is seen outside, encouraging customers to leave the vicinity of the premises, effectively encouraging them to gather elsewhere than outside Havana. As soon as the problem is apparent, when a female is assaulted and appears to fall into the road, Mr. Halabi is seen to retreat inside Havana. The incident escalated over a minute or so, and the crowd moves along Charminster Road, as we do see with these incidents where it's involving significant groups of people. The incident was viewed from Havana, and no member of staff called police, and none of the 3 members of SIA were asked to attend to the incident to deploy their skills in conflict management. There has been a significant interest in this review, and Dorset Police are grateful to those individuals that have prepared representations to reflect their own lived experience of living nearby to Havana. The only other additional detail that we have around the crime data, we've had relatively short notice to get further information, but what we do have is that over the last 12 months, there's been 10 reports of assaults or fights, one where somebody has threatened to stab another, one welfare concern, 2 sexual assaults, one call relating to antisocial behaviour, 3 reports of theft, albeit it's not terribly relevant in this case, and 1 report of a male with a knife. I don't have any information on that, unfortunately. In relation to the heat maps, they're utilised as best practice for highlighting the levels of crime and disorder that take place in any given area over a period of time. We find them useful to highlight the late night impact of licensed premises and the presence of late night premises where they are a factor. And we can say that there have been very few complaints particularly received for Golden Supermarket, which I know is something that's been raised. With regards to outcomes, we're always keen to consider different outcomes, as we have done previously, and we demonstrated in the last review. That review process highlighted concerns, and it was considered that it would be addressed through the introduction of additional conditions and some changes to the operating schedule following the last occasion, but we don't feel that fully addressed the problems. We've demonstrated that key conditions including those relating to consumption of alcohol outside, which we know to encourage customers to loiter for longer. So encouraging alcohol consumption to remain inside have been continually breached, those conditions that are attached to the premises as it is. Conditions relating to last entry have been ignored, and no informal agreement has ever been made with Dorset Police to disregard this condition. We are very grateful for the proposals put forward for enhanced SIA coverage outside and the presence of a personal licence holder. Both conditions would usually be most welcome and be indicative of the very best practice. However, you will note that the trigger incident in particular highlighted that SIA were present at the premises at the time, and the licence holder was as well present. Members will note there is a redacted part of the submission. This has been redacted by the licensing authority. We have had conversations about it. I won't go any further than to say that it reflects what I consider to be a poignant statement from another resident, which highlighted the impact that this premises had on their family and how it affects them, and that's why we felt it was appropriate to put it in. But the decision has been made to remove that, and you know that's we don't intend to change that at this stage. In the submission from Mr. Day, you'll hear that the only other viable option today is to do nothing. Dorset Police are committed to ensuring that all licensed premises consistently promote the licensing objectives. Doing nothing when there is a problem, supported by the 10 individual representations, cannot and should not be an option. We endeavour to provide comprehensive evidence in order to minimise the need for questions or clarification, and we've done so as best we can within the timescale that we have, providing it 3 weeks ago. Happy to take any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. Any questions, member?
Sorry, I'm just conscious. Would you like us to do the videos? I'm more than happy to do the videos because I'm not worried whether you see it now or afterwards. You can adduce from the videos what you wish. It's entirely up to you.
We'll run through the questions and then go from there. Members, do you have any questions? Yeah. Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. Sergeant Gosling. So obviously the review was December 2022, and obviously you say, I think both parties say there was mediation to come to a point. Looking at your paper, where I think page 14, where you're talking about modify and added existing conditions, it sounds as though, are those the conditions you were talking about in 2022? And this is about not re-emitted after 3:30, incident logs, no drinking outside. So you obviously agreed these. Have you, since 2022, have you gone back to the Havana and said these incidents are still occurring? Have you had that dialogue in the last 2 years? Thank you.
So we liaise regularly with all premises that are involved in the pub watch, and as I've said, Mr. Halabi is a very vocal member of that pub watch. We do feed back concerns that we've got, and we try and do so to encourage improvement where issues are identified. I'm just trying to get to the page that you're referring to, but I believe you're referring to where. Is that where changes were made through a variation? Yeah, so change, page 34.
Yeah.
Oh.
Those were the conditions that changed.
Yeah.
If I can answer, because I'm in more sort of day-to-day contact with Mr. Halabi and addressing the issues that are brought to my attention. The conditions that you are referring to were mediated conditions on the back of the review brought in late 2022, and they were largely around the effective management of dispersal to safeguard customers and staff and local residents as well in an effective, swift dispersal policy. So those were the conditions that were mediated. They were then submitted by Mr. Day on behalf of his clients as a minor variation to be included on the license, which stands in its current state with those conditions included. We do mention in our original review that several of those conditions were breached. We could evidence that they were breached in this recent incident of the 21st, 22nd of September.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
So really, just to clarify, so it is only in the last few months that it's been an issue in the last 2 years?
Yes, it's probably been more.
I think that we went through a period, or sorry, the premises went through a period of relative stability after that initial review and the mediation. And and we engage regularly with Mr. Halabi, and he had a very good management team, a very robust management team, and it did go through a very tranquil period, if you like, whether that was down to customer numbers or good management, I can't say, but there was regular engagement. It is only in the last few months that we have had escalating concerns, as Sergeant Gosling has said, starting from interest because of an increase in the amount of intelligence in respect of the premises, and then incidents that are being reported to us, which then we investigate from a licensing perspective, culminating in these 2 significant incidents.
Okay,
at the beginning of September.
That's useful. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson?
Yeah.
Yes, re the crime and disorder, has it been mostly external? And if so, sort of CCT evidence that they were customers of the club, or maybe have come from other bars, clubs in the area?
I'm hoping we'll address that when we go to the videos, and we can show you how the group develop outside Havana and then moves on. But in relation to issues that are reported to us, it isn't uncommon that we hear a lot more about what happens externally anyway, because what happens internally is usually managed internally. It's only when people might report, such as this case, where we might get some people that are concerned and they provide us intelligence around drug activity or violence that's unreported. But our experience is that the majority of what we do is relating to how it impacts outside of the premises. Hopefully that will answer your question.
But can you actually ascertain that these people were in the Havana rather than somewhere else and have sort of got together outside the Havana for some reason?
Yes, that will be clear. In particular, in relation to the trigger incident, you will see how the group have gathered from Havana.
I'd just like to ask a question, Sergeant, with regards the heat maps. I did notice in the report that there were no actual figures, but you obviously have provided us this morning with some figures. How is the data logged in terms of for you to provide the heat maps?
So we have systems within the police that are a combination of, it first starts with our systems that are used to record reports that come in to the police. That system then speaks to a separate system, which is a record management system. We take a combination of both, ensuring that there's no duplication, but there's a combination of both, particularly in incidents that aren't progressed beyond a call to the police. So we rely on analyst time to do that, and they do that best they can amongst the fairly limited resources that we have in that area.
So can I just add to that? Does the information that you've been provided basically come from the 18 reports that you've identified this morning, or is there items of disturbance which aren't, let's say, moved further within the police, but there are incidents that have taken place?
Absolutely. We tend to try and, the information that we give you there in relation to the numbers, they're the number of reported incidents that have made it as far as the record management system, to try and be as transparent as we can. If we put every single report on there, it would be an awful lot more than that. So we try and stick to the reports that make it through as a something that's a bit more certain than just maybe somebody putting a 10-second call into the police.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Mr. Day, do you have any questions for Sergeant Gosling?
I have quite a few, if I may, through you. So can I start with where you finished, these heat maps? My understanding of it is, and I'm looking at page 26 to begin with, of the agenda papers, is page 6 of your supplementary, Sergeant. You start off with a heat map showing 12 a.m. to 2 a.m., 25th of April 24 to 25th October 24, period of 6 months. And then the second one, same level of demand using same criteria for 12 months, October 23 to October 24. Is that fair to compare a 6-month period with a 12-month period? I mean, logic suggests you'd have double the number of incidents.
Yes, not intended as a comparison. It's intended to give two completely separate pictures. So, if, for example, the councillor earlier asked whether this has been an ongoing problem. Has this just been a more recent problem, or has it been a much bigger issue over a longer period of time? So it's not intended to be comparing like for like. I wouldn't expect you to look at two different data sets and compare them. That they were never intended to be compared.
Thank you.
And
Mr. Day?
then again, there are other premises not very far away from Havana, Dancing Jug. You had concerns about those premises as well, did you not?
I don't think it would be right for us to be talking about another licensed premises here. But they're unable to answer for themselves.
That's I'm not asking you about those premises in particular, but there was a review of those premises. That's a matter of public record. There was a review of the premises license.
I'll ask the legal representative this morning. Are we aware of any previous reviews of establishments in Charminster Road?
Yeah.
Tom?
So a review of which premises?
Dancing Jug.
No, didn't review. No,
No.
no, we didn't.
Was there not a threat of review that resulted in a minor variation in much the same way as I did a couple of years ago with regard to Havana, and there was a substantial reduction in their permitted hours?
So I'm being
Right,
told
sorry,
why.
I don't think it's right that we can talk about how we arrived at a voluntary minor variation with another premises.
Right. Let me just go straight to the heat maps. The heat maps would, by definition, include incidents that were related to premises other than Havana in the locality. Would you accept that as correct?
Yes.
Right. Then I want to go to the pie chart. You spoke a little too quickly for me to get everything, but you said over the last 12 months, I think you said there were 10 reports of assaults, 1 threat to stab, 2 sexual assaults, 3 thefts, and 1 report of a knife. I know I missed one out. What was the other one?
I think that's what I've recorded.
Well, can you just read that out again, please? So just make sure that I've got it right.
Yeah. So 10 reports of assault and fights.
And fights, right?
Yeah.
All right. Are you able to help us as to whether those were inside the premises or outside?
I can't, unfortunately.
Right. You also talk about reports. You receive many reports and intelligence, some of which is correct and some of which is not correct. Is that right?
I think rather than correct or not correct, there are intelligence reports that are corroborated and some reports that are not corroborated.
Right. And some that turn out, I would respectfully suggest, to be completely wrong. For example, on the 25th of February, and I quote, intelligence was received that a victim of an alleged stabbing was received by Dorset Police from neighbouring licensed premises. The victim has sustained a serious injury and first aid has been administered by Havana before they escorted the victim out of the premises via a rear exit to avoid CCTV coverage. That was the intelligence or the report that you received, was it not?
Yes.
Turned out it was wrong. There was no stabbing in Havana.
We are unable. Yeah, we won't. What we've written there, we accept what you've said.
You see, I have, with respect, officer, I have a huge concern about this.
What is the question, Mr. Day?
Well, there's some of the intelligence.
You've asked the question which has been answered. So what's your next question, please?
Fine. Why did you refer to it in your supplementary evidence when you, the police, had already accepted that there was no stabbing in Havana? So why include it?
Yeah, that was the information that we had.
But you then had further information which you were able to corroborate, and I quote from an email that was sent by Ms. Busfield. I'm satisfied with Tarek's previous response and will, of course, copy you in on any correspondence going forward. In other words, yeah, you're right. This had actually taken place outside different premises. An off-duty member of staff went to the assistance of the person concerned and took him to hospital, dealt with it absolutely properly, nothing to do with Havana. So why even mention it?
We were attempting to get that information. The purpose of including it in that statement was that it took us a long time to get to where we were. We made various inquiries to try and ascertain what had happened, having received that information, that intelligence, and it took us a long time to get to that point.
Thank you.
Right. Please let me know when I can continue. Can I refer you, please, to page 14 and 15 of my submission, where I have please let me know when you're ready.
Page 14 of your submission.
Yes, the last two pages of actually the last page is a copy of a letter. But it's pages 14 and 15 where I have cut and paste extracts from the Council's current statement of licensing policy, and I have highlighted what I consider to be the most relevant wording. Right, are you with me so that I can ask the question?
I am, but I would question whether this is a question based on my submission or whether this is a question based on what your submission is. Because this is referring to your submission, which is why I'm somewhat caught off guard.
So, Sergeant, my response is entirely in response to your evidence, some of which you put in writing, some of which you've helped us with by elaborating on it right now. What you said when you were addressing the subcommittee was that there had been a dispersal of customers in relation to the second incident at 5 p.m. And that a group of people had left Havana, that Mr. Halabi was outside, but that in effect SIA and he didn't intervene. The incident where the young lady was pushed over took place at the bus stop, at the bus shelter. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Help me with this. In terms of the statement of licensing policy, how far should SIA registered door staff go down the road to intervene in an incident that has started a little distance, a distance away from the premises themselves?
Thank you, Mr. Day. Sergeant Gosling?
Very subjective,
I
that
know.
answer, isn't it? It's probably something that will be addressed when we show the videos, because it's we do not believe that it's responsible and appropriate for licensees and their staff to usher people away, particularly when there is a risk, or in fact when an altercation does happen. And instead of trying to diffuse that, having recognised that people have come from the premises, to instead take the approach of trying to move the problem away, and either, as we've seen, lay it at someone else's door, or perhaps to rely on somebody or another calling the police. It is a very subjective thing as to where that responsibility goes, but having an effective dispersal policy is really important to counter that risk, because we can't have licensed premises that simply push the problem out onto the street and make it the problem of the community and the blue light services.
Thanks, Sergeant.
Um,
Any question?
Yeah, I'll come back to that one once we've seen the videos. I haven't got anything else for the moment, but I do reserve the right, if you'd like to come back once you've seen any additional evidence.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Day. Any further questions at all? I just have one question on the balance of the information that's been provided. The stabbing, is that data been included in the pie chart, Sergeant?
Yes, that was the incident that Mr. Day was talking about before.
Thank you.
I do apologise. There is one other matter that I would just like to ask about. Following the end of the consultation period, a public meeting took place to which local residents were invited, and I know it didn't come from you, it came from Councillor Keddy, but a letter was circulated to local residents, and a copy of that on page 16. Did either of you attend that meeting?
Yes, we were invited to that meeting and did attend.
How many local residents turned up?
Didn't.
Don't know.
There were a few. I can't.
Well, were they queuing out the door, or were you sitting there twiddling your thumbs for some of the time? You were there 3 hours.
We at no point were we had anybody queuing out the door. We were engaged with speaking to people for periods of time, different people. It was quite informal. Some people stopped, some people left relatively quickly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. None of them volunteered to come along as witnesses today. Question.
Apologies, sorry.
Did any of them volunteer to come along as witnesses today?
No, they're not here today.
Or did any of them volunteer to come along?
I think, Mr. Day, the problem we have is that quite often members of the public are always concerned about volunteering to sit in public and bring things to the table. There is always the concern that reprisals might take place. And I fully accept that. Having been a councillor for over 25 years, I fully accept that people, whilst they're happy to talk to their local councillors, they are not willing to come and sit in front of a microphone and voice their views. Any questions at all from councillors to Sergeant Gosling at all? No, thank you. Right. So we move on to councillors, the two councillors. Did you want to make your representations to the committee, please?
Let's do the police video while we're still not with the police.
Sorry. I've just been reminded about the videos. Would it be appropriate to show them now?
We're led by you, but more than happy to show them now to maybe put some context behind what we talked about.
Okay, we'll
Police
right.
section.
Okay, so just bear with me.
Can I ask if the video footage that you are intending to show now, is that to be excluded from the public and press?
Yes.
Okay, Chair, I do need to ask you just to read it
Yes.
out formally. You've got
Yeah.
that, lovely, and then I'll do the exemption. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, under section 14.2 of the Licensing Act 2003 Hearings Regulations 2005, and with regard to section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information, and that involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 7 in part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Are members in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Carr-Brown, would you like to address the committee, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. It's the first time I've addressed the licensing committee, so forgive me if I don't do this exactly as it should be done. You already have my original statement and submission to the committee, so I just wanted to add that the main concerns of residents are noise, antisocial behaviour, crime, and feeling generally unsafe as a result of how this bar operates, its opening times, and the behaviour of patrons when leaving. All these issues relate directly to the licence Havana operates under and the willingness of its management to abide by it. I've had several reports since becoming a councillor about people urinating in residents' front gardens and drives, noisy and violent sounding disturbances, often around 5 a.m, loud music, and then the awful assault at the end of September. Havana has had multiple opportunities to demonstrate that they take their licence and its conditions seriously. Those conditions are fundamental to its safe operation and must be adhered to. I'd say this is the least you should expect from a licensee. The police have liaised with the bar at length, and it's unreasonable to expect them to devote disproportionate amounts of scarce resources to one venue. It's up to the venue to adhere to its licence, not for it to be enforced. If it's felt that the licence should continue, the necessary change would be the closing time. Havana has been cited as the source of the problems because it is the only such venue open at the times many of the incidents occur. 5 a.m. is wildly inappropriate as a closing time in such a residential area, and it's good that the police have also asked for midnight to be the limit. An area like Charminster, with its mix of families, old and young alike, young professionals, does best with a more chilled nighttime economy. I'm pleased the police have brought this review. It's time residents were able to put their views on the effect this has had on their lives and the kind of place they want to live in. The point of licensing legislation surely is to help local areas be great places to live. We deserve a safe and vibrant area. Please make your decision a part of ensuring that. Finally, I'd add that in his submission, Mr. Day is pushing the committee to a burden of proof that the residents I represent couldn't possibly reach. But this isn't a criminal case where you have to be sure. It's civil and based on the balance of probabilities. If you go to Mr. Day's level of proof, you risk ignoring what local people are saying about the cumulative effect this venue has on their lives. The law understands this cumulative effect in many scenarios now, such as domestic abuse, where individual incidents may be harder to prove. And I'd suggest it's reasonable to take that approach here. Or how is a local community ever to be able to use this law to protect itself?
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for the councillor? Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, I just, crime has been mentioned but not defined. What sort of crimes are we actually talking about? I know antisocial behaviour, but crime in itself.
Well, urinating in public is a crime. Obviously, GBH is a crime. You can also, there's public order offences here, threatening behaviour, risk of harassment. You've heard the lady on the video saying, I don't want her to see me, about one of the ladies being videoed, and that's 3 off the top of my head.
Thank you very much. Any questions at all? No. Thank you. I'd now like to move on to Mr. Day, if you would be kind enough to address the committee, please.
Thank you. I've been doing this job for quite a long time, in fact, too long. This is the longest written submission that I've ever made, and I make no apologies for that. I am sure that you will know full well that any decision that you make must be evidence-based, not to the beyond all reasonable doubt or anything like that. That's not the case. And you're also entitled to take into account hearsay evidence. So you're perfectly entitled to have your fellow councillors tell you what they've been told by other people. The problem with all that is really a question of how much weight you should attach to the evidence. And what I propose to do is to take you as quickly as I can through my submission before we get to the nub of it, because essentially this application for review was brought about by the police solely on the grounds of crime and disorder. Then local residents and the councillors there, as they're perfectly entitled to do, supported the review, but on slightly different grounds, because they're then talking about public nuisance and public safety. You have to take your lead on matters of crime and disorder from the police, and equally you take your lead on matters of public nuisance from environmental health officers and so on and so forth. And that's really the position here. So let's have a quick look, please, at the evidence in this case. I'm going to start with the heat maps. You'll have seen my written submission about that. They don't actually prove a blooming thing with respect. We don't know whether these incidents were related to these premises or to any other premises, etc. It would be our evidence that there are other premises along Charminster Road who have what are euphemistically known as lock-ins. There is an alley that goes along the back there, which you, not being local, you're probably not familiar with it, but I'm sure you two know it only too well. And it is a source of constant issues in terms of people disappearing up there to do all sorts of nefarious things, and rubbish and rats and so on and so forth. But it also provides some backdoors into premises, and you'll get my drift. And you'll have seen that little video at the end of one of the other premises, and wonder, well, why did they have the lights on and what were they doing at that time of the morning in there when they're supposed to have shut at 2 o'clock? And it happens. So if you look at the heat maps, yeah, they're heat maps. They don't compare like with like, and they don't actually prove anything at all. And then you turn to the pie chart, and as we now know, that is based on reports. And as we also now know, some of the reports are simply wrong. They are. They're wrong. So let's look at Havana itself. There is no allegation here of serious crime or crime and disorder occurring within the premises sufficient to justify a review of the licence. That's not what this case is all about. The vast majority of reviews involving unlicensed premises will come before you because there's been an almighty punch-up inside the premises, or somebody has been sexually assaulted, doorstep haven't dealt with it properly, somebody's collapsed because they've had far too much to drink and nobody has done anything about it. But Havana takes its responsibilities here seriously. And although they're not required to do so by the terms of their licence, the fact of the matter is that when they're open, and it's only on Friday and Saturday nights, they have 3 door staff, and they also have what used to be referred to as a club nanny. In other words, a member of staff, I don't want to be sexist here, but it's usually a lady member of staff whose primary function is to look after people who may have had one too many, somebody who comes to them and asks for Angela, and I'm sure you know what all that is about, to give them the support to help them find taxis and all the rest of it. And there is a considerable degree of engagement with the police, and Mr. Halabi takes all of these matters very seriously. Moving on with regard to this, and dealing with the other allegations, yes, he he's one of these people who's actually very frank and honest. And if he's done something wrong, he'll say so, and he'll tell me, and he'll tell the police. And challenged about, or rather, it was the other way around. After a pub watch meeting, he asked again about this question of whether or not he could allow staff from other bars into his premises after the 3:30 cut-off, provided that he knew them. And he was told, no, you cannot do that. Now, there is a difference of opinion as to the history there, because he's adamant that he was at one point told, yeah, as long as you know them, and it's strictly people who have been working in a couple, and I've named them, of the other premises, that's okay. Now, that's categorically denied by the police, but the point is that he stopped it completely. As for the decanting of alcohol, firstly, other premises do it. All of the other premises have been doing it and allowing people out with their little reindeer of drink. But there is another specific purpose for the decanting, and that is to try and get rid of as much glass as possible before checking out time. And if you look at that first video, the internal video, you will see the staff glass collecting, and yes, you've got a little drop left in there, pour it in here, there you go, you can drink that out of here now, because we're taking the glasses away, because the one thing we absolutely don't want you to do is take glass out of the street. Okay. In terms of that first video as well, you will, if you watch it, and it's 20 minutes, but if you watch it carefully, you will see two chaps squaring up to each other. What Mr. Halabi will have said about that was that one of them accused the other of dancing with his young lady whilst he had gone to the gents, and they had words about it. And you'll see that, yeah, he does then intervene and has words with them. The one who was accused was kept behind to try and ensure that there was no incident outside. And if you then watch the second video, you will recognize the other chap involved in this little altercation, because he's outside, he goes away, but then comes back. And Mr. Halabi, you can see quite clearly speaking to him out into the middle of the road and persuading him to go away quietly, not involved in what happened later at all, at all, at all. So we know what happened later. A couple of observations about that. The CCTV from Havana was made freely available to the police. If they wanted it, they were given it. There was total cooperation there straight away. There are further CCTV cameras in those premises. It has one of the most comprehensive CCTV systems that I'm aware of in any club, pub, whatever venue, particularly given its pretty small size. And there is another one that covers the lobby. And in a sense, we wish the police had asked for it, because then you would have seen that there is a doorman who stays there just inside all night, keeping an eye on what's going on. And that then takes me to the approach that you need to take with regard to the crime and disorder. I need to refer you to your own policy. And it is set out towards the end of my submission. And I've highlighted the relevant words. You will need to make something of a judgment here, because you are told by your own policy, and this is reflected in the national guidance as well, that your minds will be focused on matters which are within the control of the individual license holders. Whether or not incidents can be regarded as being in the vicinity of licensed premises is a question of fact. Right. Where here do you draw the line? it is perfectly clear that what is required here is for the staff at Havana to clear people away from the front of their premises. Yeah. And if you look at those videos, it is perfectly clear that that is what they do. And they move them away. Now, the question is, how far do they have to move them before they have to take personal responsibility? It's not a question of making it somebody else's problem, as the police put it. That's not the way it works. Because your policy, again, makes it clear time after time after time, once away from the licensed premises, a minority of customers may behave badly and unlawfully. And yes, they do. Other mechanisms exist, both within and outside the licensing regime, that are available for addressing such issues, and they're all set out there. And then over the page on 15, paragraph 14.16 of your policy, beyond the immediate area surrounding the premises, these are matters for the personal responsibility of individuals under the law. Let's think about door staff for a moment. Door staff are ordinary members of the public who have had specific training in things like conflict management, in terms of how they go about searching people. They have no power of search. They have no power of arrest beyond the powers that every single person in this country has to effect a citizen's arrest. All they can do is to encourage people. But as you saw from the poor chap from the Golden Supermarket, he's there. He sees this incident going and starts to go across the road and thinks better of it. Wouldn't you? In exactly the same way as you can see Mr. Halabi, some distance, because he's at the bus stop, sees this incident beginning, or an incident beginning, because this girl ends up on the ground. And yes, we accept that she was pushed to the ground. And he steps away. Right. Can somebody point me to something that says that a gentleman such as Mr. Halabi, who's been there for 20 plus years, ought to have waded in there and done something, and could have done anything to stop this incident from escalating as it did? The police are saying, well, he and his door staff, they should have done something. Really? What? They didn't do anything. Accepted. Somebody else rang 999. Well, if you look at the distance, and you've got photographs here which help you, but it is quite a long way from Havana all the way down to that bench, hub table type thing, that is beyond the Golden Supermarket. And somebody else rang 999. Well, it's not surprising, because the incident, the serious incident, happened down there. That's where the fight really ended up. And you can see that from the videos from the member of the public. You can see it from the videos from Havana. You can see it from all of the videos. Of course, one interesting thing is that you can't actually see it from the town centre videos CCTV system, because Charminster Road is pretty comprehensively covered, but there is no footage of that. All of those CCTV, every single one of them, wasn't provided by the police. They were either provided by members of the public or by Mr. Halabi. The way in which this case has progressed, I've never come across anything like it before. I don't blame Councillor Keddy, but to invite everybody to come along for a, 3-4 hour open session, specifically to talk about Havana, and then for not a single resident, and some of them asked to be kept anonymous, and I'm sure Mrs. Rogers will confirm, Others were perfectly happy to have their names disclosed and so on, but not a single one of them has come along in person or volunteered to give first-hand evidence about their experience. And there are an awful lot of residents around there, as has been pointed out, but it's also a very busy place. You have the buses, they run all night long. You have a lot of students, other people, of course, but you have revellers coming back from the centre of Bournemouth at all hours of the day and night, and being there. You've seen from the photographs that way after Havana has closed, there are people sitting outside, drinking, smoking, whatever, on that bench further down the way. So, on the grounds of crime and disorder, yes, there definitely was some crime, including a GBH. But can you sufficiently link that in the light of your policy to say, actually, this is Havana's fault and we should therefore tear up the license? And the answer is no. Noise. Noise is in two parts. And I have to say, I'm slightly taken aback now because the sound quality when Mrs. Rogers was playing it was far, far better than the sound quality when I was playing it on my computer. I'm not quite sure what happened there, plus I need to invest in some better speakers. But that splits into two things. Noise from music from within and noise from people without. And noise from music within, I have to say that when I listen to it, is why I put the comment in my representation. I couldn't hear the music. The loudest thing I could hear was either the lady speaking to her mobile phone or when that bus went past. But yeah, I accept there. There is a noise limiter. And that has been looked at by environmental health, and they are happy with it. And it may well be that an appropriate direction here is for us to make sure that we invite out the environmental health officer to carry out noise tests within the premises and to look to see what might be done in terms of lobbies, self-closures, or whatever. That is a solvable problem. As for people outside, the one particular one was that one on the 8th of September at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I mentioned this in the written representation as well, because Mr. Alabi knows that particular young lady. She had had a difference of opinion with another person of about the same age, etc., who on that particular night had been drinking in the Dancing Jug, had left there at about 3 o'clock, which is when the incident happened. The two of them saw each other and started, and forgive me if it's not politically correct, cat fighting between the two of them. And much like cats fighting, they are loud and they scream and so on. And as Mr. Halabi said to me, you know, when that started, what am I to do? You can go and talk to her as much as you like to try and quieten her down and to shut her up, but to no avail. And I can't put my hand over her mouth or gag her or anything like that. All I can do is to say, right, you're banned, you're not coming back. And she was, and she hasn't. And he is adamant that that girl is not the same girl as was then seen in the 21st September one, where, if you remember, you heard the lady who was taking the film saying it's the same girl again. He's adamant that no, it wasn't. It was a different person, and so on. So, yeah, we have a degree of sympathy, well, not a degree, we have a lot of sympathy with local residents. He's been there for over 20 years. He knows most of them. He gets on fine with most of them. A significant number of them are his customers. And the last thing that he wants to do is to upset them and so on. But given what your policy very clearly says and directs, then there is this quite serious issue of where do you draw the line? Where can you properly say this is your fault, and because you haven't done something that you should have done, we're going to effectively punish you. We did have a minor go at mediation here. But the police made it very clear that they would only consider mediation if we were to agree a much earlier closing hour. I've got their incident book here, which incidentally is pretty well kept. The only incidents that aren't in there are incidents that had nothing to do with Havana. So, for example, the stabbing that was nothing to do with Havana isn't in the Havana incident book for some strange reason, perfectly legitimate. But the incident book also logs the time. Oh, you've got it there. It also logs the number of people in the premises at any given time. And I can tell you that the reality of the situation here is that there isn't much point in them even opening before midnight because there's nobody in there. It is after midnight that this place becomes busy. There's no lunchtime trade or anything like that. So if you were to reduce the hours, then it is effectively a revocation of this particular license because of the way in which it trades. There it is. As I said at the beginning, a very detailed and lengthy written submission. There are aspects of it that I'm happy to elaborate on. I could sit here and make you sit through the CCTV from start to finish, but I can tell you straight away that despite us having looked at it countless times, the chap in particular that picked up the bottle and used it, we don't see him in those premises in the last 15, 20 minutes of it being open. And yes, sure, some of the people who were then involved or got mixed up came from Havana, and that's all incontrovertible. The question you have to decide as directed is, well, what do we mean by in the vicinity, and what do we expect, what do we demand of people? Did you really want SIA from Havana following this lot all the way down the road, 100, 200 meters or so, all the way down to my bar, and to then wade in, really? I hear the plea from the other side of the road, you must do something. Well, at the end of the day, you can only do things that's in accordance with your policy and in accordance with the evidence that you have heard. Please, please, please don't take this the wrong way. But the guidance does remind you that, particularly with regard to taking your lead from the police, that if this matter were to go further, then all evidence is then given on oath and is subject to cross-examination. Yes, hearsay evidence is allowed, but it's got to stand up to being given on oath and withstand that cross-examination. And in this case, I'm afraid to say that the police evidence doesn't do that. And if the local residents are not willing to come along, then there won't be any evidence from them to stand up to either. And please have that maybe at the back of your minds. I could go on probably for another hour, but I'm not going to. But both I and Mr. Halabi here are willing, able, indeed anxious to answer any questions that you may have, answer any questions that your fellow councillors or officers may have with regard to this matter generally. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Do members have any questions for Mr. Day at all? Councillor Richardson.
Yes, sort of in relation to the music being loud, you say the clients are coming in at midnight and later. What are they looking for at that time of night? Are they looking for loud music or just sitting down having a few more drinks or?
May I say so? Since Havana started, we always had a DJ playing in Havana. The reason people are come to us late because Havana always been known as a late bar. And we have a small dance floor. We have 2 floors. Unfortunately, for the past few months, we've been using only 1 floor rather than 2 because of the economy. To answer your questions, yes, people are looking to have a drink, dance, and listen to music.
And just one more thing. If you know your nuisance customers, do you always take action to say, please don't come again?
100%. Madam, may I just say something? I've been in Chelmsford since late 96. I used to have a restaurant called Salsa Tapas Bar, which is across the road from Havana. I started that late 96 when I was in my early 20s, and then I opened Havana in 2005. So I know my neighbors very well. I count on my neighbors. Most of them are my customers. Regarding anyone that caused any issues or any problem in Havana, usually I like to bar them for life, even that once. And I listened to his advice, and he was correct when he told me you should. That is Sergeant Gosling. He told me once you should never tell someone you're barred for life. You should tell them you're barred for a year or 2 years or 3 years, to give them a hope that they can come back again, so they don't behave so bad. If you tell them you're barred for life, they're going to behave awkwardly. Do you remember, sir? Yes, because if despite the disagreement that I have me and Sergeant Gosling, actually he was the one who helped me a lot at the beginning of Havana, how to operate my incident book, how to operate in general. Because when I started, I was never a club owner person. I was more a restaurateur. My background is more a restaurant and looking after people when it comes to food and drinks. Havana came a little bit later because I had this idea of opening a Cuban bar, playing Latin music. Obviously, it changed after a while because we realized the locals didn't like that. So we had to sort of adjust to how it is now.
So would you say music is essential to your late night economy?
Yes, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, you are the latest opening club in Charminster. I think the My Bar is 3:30 and Dancing Jug is 12:30.
Dancing Jug used to be till 3 o'clock, 3:30, the same as My Bar. Only recently, they start to shut at 12 o'clock, everyone out by 12:30. Bar Saxo, I believe until 3 o'clock, everyone out by 3:30. My Bar, I believe is 3 o'clock, everyone out by 3:30. The rest, I don't really know, sir.
Yeah, so obviously, talking about the license will be focused on matters which are within your control. So obviously, these people are in the High Street, Charminster High Street, because you are the last remaining club. So what responsibility do you think you have for them? And as we talked about, your staff. So the incident at 3, which Councillor Keddy showed, the people were going back in. There was a bit of trouble, and they were coming back into your club.
No, sir, that's not correct. The incident that happened at 3 o'clock, there were 2 ladies who left Havana, went to the bus stop waiting for a lift by someone or by bus, I'm not sure how. When at the time, dancing drag used to shut at 3 o'clock. Everyone was out at 3:30. When a car went past, they saw the two girls. A girl came out of the car and they start having as Mr. Phillips said, cat fight. That's when I tried to get the girl, the one that left Havana, that was sitting on the bus stop, tried to get them back inside Havana, so that way I can control the arguments, but the girl refused to do so. Afterward, when they wanted to come back, I said, no, you were not allowed in. And that particular girl, I barred her.
I'm just trying to say that at 3:30, when everyone else is shut, you're the only one open. These are your customers, and how much responsibility do you take with a dispersion? Obviously, I think we've heard from the police that they weren't happy that you're taking enough support for that. You're just, as we saw, you're pushing them out away.
I don't believe that is totally correct or true, because what I can do, what I try to do my best is, number one is to call for loss of taxis to take them away. Number two is try to ask them kindly to walk away. And we have lots of signs to ask people to leave quietly. I usually go outside myself, and the reason I do it myself is because I know majority of the people I ask them, say, guys, please be quiet because of our neighbors. And that's when they start walking away, either towards going to the supermarket to buy some more drinks or go to the bus stop waiting for a bus or something like that. Beyond that point, there's nothing I can do, sir.
Okay. And then obviously we heard the noise, and there will always be disturbance. But we've heard since August in particular, the councillors have had a lot more cases of people complain. Has anything changed at your establishment?
No, the only thing I can say is in the past, and I'm talking about a few years back, I did have an email from Andrew Hill, and he did come and visit Havana, who I believe is an environment health officer. We spoke about at the time, and that's when I put a noise controller in Havana. I explained to him about the door, because at the time the fire, people said I cannot have a second door because it would be too close to the stairs. That's the reason we do not have a second door. I promised him, and if you see any of the recording from inside Havana, you will always see me. I'm behind the door, making sure the door is shut, or someone else is, to make sure that main door is always kept shut. Regarding what happened recently in Havana, and this is, please excuse me when I say that, what Sergeant Gosling said, that since we had the review 2 years ago, we had no issues for a long time. But then recently, in the last few months, there was some more problems start to happen in the road. Now, without me mentioning any bars or any names or anything like this, but we did have changes in Chalmers Road. And that particular changes in Chalmers Road, that, my opinion, they start to allow people that were not allowed to come to Chalmers Road that start coming again. Therefore, we did have a lot of changes in characters. Now, not inside of Havana, because I was always very strict who I let in. We've lost a lot of customers because of that, but that's fine. I'd rather have less customers, but nice customers, than a lot of customers that cause me problems. But what happens outside on the main road, sir, that is not something I can control. I can ask people kindly to walk away. I can get taxis for them. I can make sure everyone is safe and well. But anything beyond the bus stop, anything further than that, even when I do, so many cars stops outside with loud music, and I approach them, asking them, please turn the music down. Some of them are kind enough to do so. Some of them tell me the F word. Now, what am I supposed to do?
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you, Mr. Halabi. Any questions from the applicant's side at all?
Yes, only a couple.
Thank you.
Only a couple, Chair. There was some reference made earlier to my bar and a video shown. Can I just ask what the relevance is really for my bar and this incident and this review, please?
There are two aspects to that. The first is that the CCTV that was volunteered clearly shows, well, it doesn't clearly, but it shows the tail end of the incident, and it shows people coming from quite some distance away, and actually quite a distance away from Havana before it got frankly really nasty. And you could see in that last video that there were boots going in. I mean, it was pretty horrible and so on. The other, you will draw your own inference. Why were the lights on there and people there at that time of the morning? I don't know. They're not here to answer the question, but you are perfectly entitled to draw inferences from what you see.
To assist the committee with that, would you like to, we did follow up on that mention of some sort of lock-in or some allegation of lock-in. And we did contact my bar to understand and to follow up on that. If you're interested in understanding that, would you like to know?
Yes, I think the committee would be happy for an explanation.
Okay, so the doors to the public are closed at 3:30. That gives opportunity for the bar staff to clean the premises down, which can take some time. There is also the opportunity on certain nights of the week that staff present have a team meeting and review the previous night's experience. There was cleaning taking place inside, and there was some fighting observed outside by the licensee. There were, on that night, apart from the bar staff, there were 3 other customers present who were waiting, 2 of which were waiting for the licensee to give them a lift home, and the other was actually waiting to give one of the members of staff a lift home. No licensable activities were taking place. Unfortunately, we were unable to verify that because the time that has passed since that incident, we were unable to get CCTV to corroborate it. So we haven't got anything further than that.
Thanks very much. Any further questions at all? Councillor Carberry.
Sorry, yeah, just a couple more, Chair, if that's okay. So mention was made by Mr. Day around the majority of the occasions, it's more common to review licensed premises with on sales in particular, for instance, that take place inside the premises. But can you just clarify, it is okay, isn't it, to review, for instance, that do take place outside, even though there is it's an on sales premises?
Of course it is, but the issue is the interpretation of the policy and what is meant by the immediate vicinity. Is something happening at the bus stop within the immediate vicinity is something that ends up happening outside my bar in the immediate vicinity. I would suggest that the latter most definitely is not, and that you would be pushing things to expect door staff. In fact, I go further than that. It would be wrong to demand that door staff or Mr. Halabi intervene in things happening at the bus stop. So, for example, when that lady was pushed over or fell or whatever it was, she was on the ground, and my view, but it is a matter for you and your colleagues, is that it would have been inappropriate for door staff to have intervened, and had they done so, they would have been putting themselves at an unacceptable risk, not just physically, but also being accused of behaving inappropriately. If they'd waded in, then they could quite easily have found themselves on the receiving end of complaints of assault, because they would not have been acting in their own self-defense. They're not policemen or police women. They have no authority beyond their premises themselves.
May I say something regarding that particular night, Sergeant Gosling, when you came to my office with Louise Bosfield and you had a look at the cameras and you saw that particular camera too, when I was outside asking the people to walk away, please. And I went inside, and then that's when the girl got pushed. I showed you the camera from inside, which I was very surprised why it was not in here. I showed you when I went inside Havana and I asked 2 of my security to come and to have a look to see what's happening outside. When we realized they start to walk away. Therefore, we decided, and I did explain to you, by then, my 2 security, at that night I had 3 security. 1 security already went across the road waited for the bus, and he left. Now, while he was across the road waiting for the bus, we were looking to make sure everything was okay. There was nothing major. Basically, the fight was not happening, nothing happening. That's when he got on the stop. He gave us a thumb up to say everything is fine, and he went. The other two security were inside. They've already taken the camera from their body arm. They've taken the radios. They were sitting down waiting for the DJ to give them a lift. Now, when I went inside, when that gear was pushed, I got the two security to come up with myself, looking at from inside of Havana what's happening outside to see is it getting any worse or getting calmer. That's when we saw it was getting calmer and people start walking towards the supermarket. That's when we went back inside. The other two security were still waiting for their lift, and I think within like a minute or two. And that day, if you saw the cameras, you saw them coming out with Alex, the DJ, and I was upstairs in my office doing my paperwork and finishing the tills. That's when I saw the blue lights. When I came downstairs, I saw the security from Gordon Supermarket walking towards me because they shut, which I was very surprised because they never usually shut at this time. That was more or less 5:36, 5:37 a.m. in the morning. And they said that there were an incident and it happened. And I said, if anyone got injured, they said someone got injured. The ambulance came and they took him away. I said, what about the police? Did they come? They said they came, but they left. So I was expecting the police to call me the following day for CCTV, which that didn't happen. And that is the same night when I saw Mirav, the lady, the owner from my bar, leaving my bar with a few people. And that's when I called her to ask her what happened, because at that time, I was not aware of the fight. I was upstairs in my office doing my paperwork, closing down the tips.
Thank you for that.
One final question, Chair. I think one of the other one, I was going to ask whether or not Mr. Day believes it's okay for the licensee to relinquish that responsibility. I think we've got the answer of yes, because of the reasons that have been stated. The one final question is, what did Mr. Halabi, did you not think that it would be appropriate if you're not going to go out, if the SIA are not going to go out, that a call to the police might be appropriate?
Maybe you're 100% correct, sir. I honestly, hand on heart, I thought they were going to walk away. And that's the honest truth. And in my past experience, when you call the police, it really does take forever to come. However, I'm not saying what I did that particular night was correct. Looking at hindsight, I was wrong. I should have called the police. But I did not think it was going to get bigger or worse than what I thought. Everyone was walking away. That's the honest truth.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions at all? Councillor Carr-Brown.
Thank you. Just a brief one. Again, a point of clarity. If I heard you correctly in your submission, you were talking about the distances being covered that night as somewhere around 100 to 200 metres. Did I understand you correctly when you said that?
Yeah, I haven't measured it, but it's got
Well,
to be,
lucky for you, I have.
what, from Havana all the way down to that bench?
Yes, it's 60 metres. Havana to Mr. Falafel is 63 metres.
I confess to being surprised.
Indeed. So as I have very good knowledge of that local area, I just wanted to make that point of clarification so that the committee could be very clear about what the vicinity might actually look like.
Sorry, just on that, it's not vicinity, it's immediate vicinity. And I hope that we can agree that 63 metres isn't immediate vicinity, but that's a matter for the committee.
Indeed, and that is for them to take a view on. Absolutely. What I wanted that view to be based on, though, was an accurate assessment of the distances. Havana to Mr. Falafel, which is where the bench is, which is where the glass bottle was, which is where the main incident took place. In fact, if you count it to the middle of the road, it would be even nearer.
Okay, right. I think we're at the point now where we can move on to, oh, sorry, Councillor Geddy.
Thank you. Also, the other venues are engaging in the decanting of drinks when they leave. This was brought up at a recent pub watch where other venue representatives from My Bar, Saxo and Dancing Jug were present. They quite vehemently denied that particular practice. No venue should be decanting drinks to be taken outside. It would be a breach of licence. And Charminster Road, as with most urban areas within BCP, is subject to a public space protection order regarding alcohol consumption. So my question is, is this common practice?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, regarding that particular meeting, which Louise was not present, Vanessa was present, and I was the one who mentioned it because at that time I was not aware I was breaking the law by giving plastic cups. And I did say in that meeting, and I believe both of you guys were there, when I said I was not aware, I'm not allowed to do it, and I only started doing it recently, and that mean the last couple of months, when I saw a lot of people coming to my venue with plastic cups. When they were coming from my right-hand side and my left-hand side, I was not mentioning names, okay, from both sides. Now, somebody in Dancing Jug straight away said, no, it wasn't us. And I said, well, you've only been there for the last 3 weeks. I'm talking about previously to that. That's when Saxo said, because he said, oh, yes, I was doing it, but I wasn't sure I'm not allowed to do it. I said, well, each license is different, but as far as I know, and I said, and I admitted, that's my fault. And I did say it will never happen again. And since I got back to Havana, I got rid of all the plastic cups. That's when I spoke with Mir. I said, yes, I was not aware that I'm doing that. I got rid of all my plastic cups in this. So everybody was doing it. Nobody was aware that it's against the law. But in that meeting, nobody opened their mouths. I was the only one who I said to in front of everybody, I was doing it and I was wrong. And I put my hand up, but I wasn't aware I was breaking the law by doing that. I thought I was, it is
Okay, Mr. Falabi,
naivety.
I think we've got them.
Sorry.
Thank you for that response. In the context of Pub Watch and the incident on the 8th of September, you said that the girl in question was barred from the premises. Was that raised? Was her barring raised at Pub Watch and proposed?
No, for lots of different reasons. Number one, it was barred from me for what she did that particular night. Maybe in other venues, she's never done anything. Number two, I don't even know her names, to be honest with you. And number three, I did not think I should raise it because, like I said to you, just because I don't want her in my bar doesn't mean other bars gonna do the same. In fact, well, no, let's leave it to that. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question around what seems to be a bone of contention, which is the dispersal policy and the definition of immediate vicinity. The police video footage showed a disturbance happening, developing outside Havana, I would say within the immediate vicinity. Would you say, in your opinion, that where the girl got knocked over in the road, that was in the immediate vicinity of Havana?
No, I don't believe it is. That's a matter that the committee will have to consider. And I've made my submissions. It is to an extent subjective, but immediate in my book means right now, here, now, not out there.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Let's jump in on point. Sorry, just for the purpose of clarity, can I understand? I know we're talking about immediate vicinity. Can I be pointed towards where that's listed? Because in the statement of licensing policy, it simply mentions in the vicinity at 8.5. I'm just wondering if there's somewhere else that says immediate vicinity. I wouldn't ordinarily raise it other than the fact that we've had a lot of attention drawn on immediate.
It's 14.16. Beyond the immediate area surrounding the premises, these are matters for the personal responsibility of individuals under the law. That's what it says. There's 14.6 of the BCP policy.
Okay.
It's on the next page, guys.
Yeah.
Page 15 at the very top.
Page 17. That's it.
14.16.
Yeah, 14.16.
Okay.
And for what it's worth, if you read on, it's considered perfectly reasonable for the licensing committee to impose a condition that requires the license holder or club to place signs at the exits, encouraging patrons to be quiet until they leave the area. Yep, done that, tick. Or that if they wish to smoke, do so at designated places on the premises. Well, there isn't within the premises a designated area, which is why there's a member of door staff always there in the lobby, keeping an eye on those who are immediately outside smoking. And to respect the rights of people living nearby to a peaceful night. That's what Mr. Halabi tries to do. So all of those boxes are with respect ticked.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further questions, I'd like to move on to the summing up process. Mr. Day, is there anything that you'd like to add to your presentation?
I must admit, I never make a point about the order of events of these hearings when invited to do so at the beginning, but it's always struck me as rather curious that having just addressed you at length, I then immediately back again. And it does seem to me that it would have make more sense if the other side took this slot and I took the final slot on this occasion. So on that basis, and because I would be repeating myself, and unless there is anything else that I can assist you with in the light of the questions that were asked, I'm going to rest my case.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Councillors, did you have anything further to add at all? And Sergeant Gosling.
Yes, so I'll try and be as brief as I can. You've heard lots of information, read lots of accounts from the residents, and you've heard representations presented by ourselves and local councillors. You've heard from Mr. Day and Mr. Halabi that these problems are not associated directly with Havana. Amongst other things, issues around other premises contributing to the disorder. There's been some element of diverting towards my bar for their apparent late night activity. The fact that there's only 10 representations from the public, despite there being quite a densely populated area. And finally, as well, you've heard that there's been no legal basis for Mr. Halabi and his staff to intervene in the incident once they've left the immediate vicinity, as per the statement of licensing policy. I think blaming other premises in Charminster, photographing people stood outside other stores late at night doing nothing, which is what we've seen in some of the evidence, all intended to push the attention elsewhere, which is exactly what we've seen in that footage of the trigger incident where people have been encouraged to go down the road. Had that fight not been allowed to develop outside the bus stop, it would not have escalated as it did that night. It wasn't the fault of the table. It wasn't the fault of the premises that the table had a glass bottle on it. Nobody could have odds that. But the bar is frequented by a regular customer base, and I would invite you to ask yourselves whether the staff could or should have exerted their conflict management skills that they do have as SIA staff, the influence and rapport they have because it's regular customer base, and made a little bit more effort to de-escalate the issue and avoid that harm from taking place. The 10 representations from residents is the highest number of representations that I've experienced in the past 7 years for a single review. Coupled with the redacted comments from another resident, I won't go into that in any detail, but that provides a really clear evidence base for you to take appropriate action to reduce the adverse impact of this premises on the community. Havana staff and its management are bound by the conditions that support a safe dispersal of patrons from the area. Pushing them away, turning your back on a fight is not indicative of a responsible operator. There are, of course, other options that could be explored other than revocation. You've heard about some of them today, and the representations from the public have detailed that. Mr. Day has mentioned there are other licensed premises in the area, and there was some alluding to a premises recently that has reduced the amount of disorder associated with it as a result of reducing its hours and changing its operating model. We wouldn't wish to undermine necessarily the experiences of the residents. However, it may be appropriate that members seek a reduction of the hours, with a requirement perhaps for last entry to avoid continued use of this premises as a last chance saloon. We did try in December 2022 to achieve improvement and unfortunately continue, as I've already explained, to associate crime and disorder with this premises. And if you are unable to be satisfied that any other measures will make a difference, make a further difference, we would invite you to revoke the licence. Alternatively, consider substantial changes to the conditions where you can be satisfied, of course, that the conditions will be met and that they are relevant to the issues that have been raised today. We are grateful for the courage of the residents who have come forward and offered their representations. 10 households have come forward. That's the way to look at it. 10 individual households from that area have come forward and given you an insight into their experience of this licensed premises. You've got an opportunity to have a significant impact to improve their lives. Mr. Day's invited yourselves to consider taking no action. This recommendation is purely on the basis that doing anything other than taking no action is likely to result in an appeal. That will be a drawn out process, and that will be a very difficult, timely, potentially costly process to undertake. The reason for the appeal would be if the decision is considered to be wrong. That is how it's written. And supporting your communities where there are premises that are failing to uphold the licensing objectives is not wrong. Please reflect on the information and evidence that's been presented to you today by everybody. It's been a long morning / afternoon. And balance the need, and I'm grateful as well for the councillors who have been in a really difficult position trying to balance the business community alongside the residents. Always a difficult thing to do. But it's absolutely right that they're here today and that they're representing those residents. I will leave it there. Thank you very much.
Can I just minor correction? There were a total of 10 representations supporting the review. 2 of those from councillors. There were actually 8, not 10. It's only a minor point, but in the interest of getting it right, there were 8 residents.
Okay, right.
For the record, I am a resident of Charminster.
Thank you, Councillor Keddy. I think at this point, I would bring the hearing to a close. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance.